good morning to you all, and welcome to the Breakfast Club right here on Asake. My name is Fungai Mawada. So as you know, we are all heading towards the 2023 elections with bated breath, looking at some of the participants who will be taking part in the 2023 elections. And of course, coming to focus as to why women are lagging behind when it comes to elections generally in Zimbabwe. So joining me today on the Breakfast Club, I am joined by Tavita Mpala, who is the programs manager at the Great Zimbabwe University, to talk more about enhancing the electoral process for women in politics. Good morning, Tavita, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Why do women shy away from politics in general?
I think maybe the first point to start with will be to focus on political structures that are there in the currently existing political parties in Zimbabwe. You'd find that, number one, for you to be deemed a candidate in those political structures, they require, number one, money, influence, and you'd find that most of the candidates that are then put forward are men. And if we go back to our patriarchal society, you'd find that politics, business, and leadership becomes harder for women, especially young women, to penetrate into an already masculine setup whereby they're considering your gender, number one, is a qualifier, number two, your financial capability, whereby candidate A, B, C, and D was male is only being considered because his father or his great-grandfather have been active in politics. So now his name speaks for them. It then means that women are at a great disadvantage because we've always had lesser women being active in politics. So as Tavita, it becomes harder for me to be considered a candidate at political party A because I'm a woman, I do not have money, and I do not have a referral point. My mother was not active in politics. She might not have never even voted. So it becomes harder for women to penetrate these political structures to even be considered a candidate. And then one of the biggest challenges that lessens women's participation in politics is the media. You'd find that the media is responsible for framing and branding these male political leaders and also female political leaders. So the media, you'd find that in Zimbabwe, has this, I'll call it the war stigma that is attached to female politicians. Once you are a woman and you're active in politics, it doesn't even mean you're a candidate. If you're Fungai and you're from Lobewela West and you are an active person in the political circles, they will label you a hoe. Or she has slept with A, B, C, and D to have that position, or she's sleeping with A, B, C, and D to even have a t-shirt. To have access to t-shirts, you have to be labeled a role. And this is not only through word of mouth. You find that even on mainstream media, on our alternative media, women are labeled prostitutes. I did a quick Google search for I just went in and typed, I'll use this name, Grace Mugabe, whore. So many articles came flooding in. Linda Masarira, whore. They're talking about her being married. I'm quoting articles, being married with 5 children and being happily married again. This is a second marriage. So how do we vote for someone who's had a failed marriage who's got 5 kids? You search Winnie Mandela. There's a whole article about her being a war and entertaining other people. You search the CCC spokesperson. Recently, she was being labeled for entertaining or being in a relationship with a married man. And you'd find that our mainstream media is putting out this issue. Social media, if you go on Twitter, people are even holding Twitter spaces to discuss political women's sexual things that they do behind closed doors. People want to talk about that. It's so interesting because women in politics are so sexualized. So you'd find that if you are sexualizing someone with so much authority, so much power, what message are we sending to the young girl in Culture Park who just wants to even go and vote? I will become afraid. I'll never put my name up forward because I know that once I'm involved in politics, the next thing I'm being labeled the wall, or I thought my way through power, A, B, C, and D. And it doesn't only go on to the media labeling women politicians as war, because you'd find that we look at their bodies, we look at their makeup, we look at their hair, because we're sexualizing them. If, for example, Linda is being persecuted by the likes of Shadaya and some other articles that are there for her being dark and not bathing. It is, I always say that people use so many tools and strategies to decampaign someone. people are no longer focusing on Linda, the politician, but then they're focusing on Linda's ability or lack of birthing because she's stuck. People stop focusing on Grace Mugabe's efforts, but they're now focusing on whatsoever the media is feeding them. Grace was a whore in comparison to Salim Mugabe. Grace slept with Mugabe when she was a secretary. The stories are never ending. And half the time, we don't even know that they're true and they've been fact-checked, what's really going on. So it really comes to question how the media then goes on to translate and also to brand those political leaders. Thus, young women will not participate in politics because we already know that I'm going to be labeled a whore. And the other thing is young women Fungai, are slacking, because I'll say this, I've said this in another conversation, that you'd find that women in politics were seen as cheerleaders. We are there to wear the Zambias, to wear the t-shirts, to shake our bum, and you'd even see how it even come through on TV. The only clip that is inserted is when women are cheering someone on, wearing the regalia. They are so happy. But do we ever give women a chance to speak on the issues that affect them? No, because women are seen as cheerleaders. We are players that are remain in this game of politics. So it's really sad. You know, our voices are not being heard. We're being peddled. We're being used. And you find that the only time that you can ever hear a woman speaking, be it on mainstream media or on social media, is if number one, she's bashing another woman, or number two, she's being sent to bash another political leader. Say, for example, well, the women's front is saying, Ningi Ningi at Chamuda. That is not all that women have to say. Also, Fungai, politics is a very violent game. So it becomes harder for a normal girl from Pumula North to go to a political rally when each and every time I'm flipping my newspaper, I'm reading about, oh, there was violence at that rally, or so-and-so was killed, there was a political killing, or APC&D was detained. So as a woman in this world, we are put with the burden of protecting ourselves, and we are blamed for not being able to protect ourselves. So to protect me, I'm going to sit at home and not go to a rally. I'm going to sit at home and not go and vote. I'm going to sit at home and not be vocal about my political views because I want to protect myself. So women would rather not participate in politics because they want to protect themselves, because we know that if I speak out, there are issues of adaptations going on. If I speak out, who's going to pay for my fees when I'm arrested for a faulty crime?
You, like myself, are a woman who is in media. You obviously have a voice. You already have access to platforms in order to enhance the electoral processes for other women. What do you think we as women in the media can do to enhance the electoral processes for other women within the country? Aside from their political views and the likes, how do we enhance that political experience for women, making it a safe zone where they're able to articulate their views politically and in a just and favorable way?
I think the first thing that we need to do as women in media, number one, is to capacitate ourselves, empower ourselves. You'd find that political reporting in our line of work is male dominated as well, and women shun from it. I would rather report on showbiz or do talk shows because we think that we cannot handle the hard stuff. So I think it's high time that women in media say, I can do this. You know, we attend these workshops, we further our education and our understanding in issues to do with politics. That way we can provide platforms whereby we can invite female political leaders, the girl next door, to come through and speak on their issues. Because if you are not empowered as a media practitioner, it becomes harder for you to even speak on politics. Because if you do not understand the constitution, Fungai, if you do not understand the electoral process in Zimbabwe, how can you speak on it? How can you write information about it? How can you invite people in your own space, in your television show, in a newspaper article, if you yourself do not understand the information and how things are done? So I think the first thing first is that women in media need to be able to empower themselves and also to come up to the challenge and do political reporting. So I think one thing that we can do is that I did a quick Google search, Fungai, and I went on the internet to see issues to do with the electoral process and how it is structured, you'll find that it is like a mouthful of information just strummed up together. So I think the first thing that we can do as women in media is to try to simplify political messages for women consumption. We understand our daily struggles. So let us create pamphlets, newspaper articles, TV programs, radio programs, whereby we simplify the electoral process targeting young women in Zimbabwe. Let us call our sisters, our friends, we got so much influence in different sectors, and ask them questions that they do not understand, because you find that half the women I've spoken to haven't even registered to vote because, number one, they do not even have an ID. So it is through such conversations that as practitioners, we can then facilitate for change and also lobby for government and responsible offices to create channels whereby these women, for example, get an ID and register to vote. You speak to someone and ask them, if you register to vote, they say, no, I don't even know that we're voting, or what is even the year that qualifies me to vote? And I am speaking to a fellow woman. So I think if we facilitate for such discussions on our various platforms where we work, it will become easier for women to be able to vote as well. And then, like I said, by empowering ourselves as media practitioners, we provide a safer platform for women to be able to talk to someone that they relate to. It is harder for a woman to try to explain their experience as in a political sector to a man who's going to label her emotional, irrational, a whore, or, you know, women just like attention. There's so many rumors that have been posted on the media because a woman spoke to a man who does not understand the situation, and how, for example, she can be sexually harassed because you'll be talking to someone who has been taught that women ask for harassment by the way that they dress. So if we as female journalists provide platforms for political leaders, female political leaders, without even looking at which political party they are affiliated to, we will become their safe space whereby they can come through and air out their views. And also, I think when it comes to issues to do with language and framing as well, we should also be able, as female practitioners, to use female-friendly language. You'd find that half the time when people are writing, when male reporters are writing about female politicians, they usually do not focus on the politician per se. They focus either on her dressing, like I said, on her sexual activities, on her skin color, on her failed marriages. That would be the main headline. For example, let us say, home reka, ningi, does this. We're not even focusing on what that politician is doing in a line of work. So that's why I'm saying that it's very important for female journalists to be able to become the providers, and I'll call it the bridgeway, to link the female politician to the community. And also, Fungai, you'd find that male political leaders are mostly written by male journalists, and then they go on to a male-owned newspaper and get the first page. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Whereas women were not empowered in the media. So how can we empower women? But then what I like is there are a lot of now women-led online publications, and I'm hoping that they shift the focus and also give the limelight to our female political leaders. Let us make them important, because remember, Fungai, you as Fungai are responsible for branding. You're an opinion leader. So if you say Linda has done A, B, C, and D for her community, people will listen. But if we go on writing about makeup, that is what our women are going to consume, and the male will keep on dominating in the media spaces. What else? I think that's it. Okay, also the last one is to advocate for policies that provide safety for against political violence. I feel like we're not talking much about it, but in the generalness, women in media, women in politics do not feel safe. So I think we as female media practitioners can advocate for safer policies spaces to make sure that women who are practicing the spaces feel safe enough to be able to be themselves and to be the change that we need.
And like I highlighted at the beginning of this conversation, that you are based at Great Zimbabwe University, which is obviously an educational institution with children from young adults as young as 18 years old, right? And it's been a factor that a lot of 18 to 24-year-olds are not registering to vote. There's a lot of voter apathy within that age region. What is the situation like on the ground in regards to getting young people to register to vote, particularly looking at your setup at the Great Zimbabwe University?
You'd find that majority of the youth are not registering to vote because they feel like their vote will not bring any change. You know, when you come from a situation whereby you see corruption each and every day, whereby the roads are in a bad state, whereby access to proper health facility is a dream for most of us, it becomes harder for the youth to vote. But then I've drafted some ways that I think can encourage the youth, especially students, to not only to vote, but my main issue now is to make sure that people register to vote, right? So I understand that there have been a lot of voter education exercises that have been happening. But the thing is, it's harder for youth to relate to someone who's not part of their peer group, right? So I think maybe if we put youthful faces behind the voter education campaigns, let us go back to these universities and see influential people that we can then use and also assimilate not only in political parties, Fungai, but also civic organizations can use these active youth leaders. You'd find that most students who are in universities are extremely active on social media spaces. Let us look for those people with 10K followers and help them educate their peers on the importance of voting. Because if we put a youthful face, it becomes easier for a student to relate to that message, rather than having Sekuru, A, B, C, and D coming to tell me that it's important for me to vote. That's the biggest challenge that we have, that we're not having youthful faces speaking about voter education and voting and for example. So I think that it's very important for us to put these youthful faces on. And also for what we've been doing is that we are a campus radio station. So we give a platform to various students with not only looking at politics, but if you have a passion about anything, we provide a platform for the youth to come through and talk. So like what I've been saying, that if you put a youthful face to something, for example, let me give you the simplest example. We have a second-year student coming through to talk about her library experience, how to access library services. It becomes easier for a 1-1 to unpack and to understand how to access library services rather than reading a brochure about it or having a 40-year-old librarian trying to explain certain things to them. So let us put youthful faces behind these voter education campaigns. And then one thing that we can also do is that, like I said, the youth is very active on social media. They're very active on capturing the moment and making sure that there's a saying that I hear most, that if you didn't post about it, it didn't happen. So what is stopping ZEC and other civic organizations that are for encouraging people to vote to say, let us create a campaign whereby if you register to vote, you can take a snap, create a hashtag, and have people talking about it. I know that when we're growing up, Fungai, in high school, we'd have the Be Nice to Me, I Donated Blood. That was a great campaign because you find that most people who go on to donate blood because of that sticker. Well, the food was a bonus and everything. But let us have these social media campaigns that then encourage. If we put faces, for example, influential faces, I've seen that on Twitter, Baba Harare, even if he's going to post something silly, at the end of the day, he says register to vote. It is not linked to any political party. He's just encouraging the youth to vote. So it is up to ZEC, it is up to civic organization, it's up to also media houses to then put these influential faces, youthful influential faces, to be ambassadors of the I have voted or I have registered to vote campaign. I remember there was a time whereby we had partners of some sort with this organization that was offering transport to students for a whole month once they've showed proof that they have registered to vote, or if they wanted help in terms of registering to vote. So these are such campaigns that will then motivate the youth. Imagine getting a whole month of free transport just because you have registered to vote. So I think that's one way that we can also capture the youth as well. And one thing that I think should be really done is to creating special activities for the younger generation, because now you'd find that we are trying to convince a 26-year-old to vote, yet when that person was younger, we were not cultivating those that culture in them. So I think it's important that we go back to the drawing board and go back to the primary school students, high school students, and encourage them to vote. Let us teach them of the importance of voting, so that when they grow up, they are already adults who understand their rights and their need to vote. Recently, there's been a viral tweet that spoke about how the Do Not Litter campaign has made that person not litter ever in their lives. Why don't we have such campaigns on voting, targeting the younger generation, so that our next generation will not suffer from voter apathy, where everyone knows that once I turn 18, I will exercise my right to vote, and it matters.
And we really, really appreciate your time this morning on the Breakfast Club. And of course, we look forward to seeing your work at the campus radio that is at Great Zimbabwe. But thank you so much for sharing your time and your gems of knowledge, and we wish you all the best, of course, in your career as you go forth as a media practitioner. And to you at home, thank you so much for joining us once again on the Breakfast Club with myself, Fungai Mawada. Make sure you join us again tomorrow, same time, right here on Asake. Please don't forget to like and to follow us on all social media platforms, website ZW on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, as well as on Twitter. From myself, Fungai, as well as the beautiful Tavita Mpala, is goodbye.